All right, for this explainer, we're going to do something a little different. We are tapping into a broadcast from a not so distant future, a daily intelligence briefing from October 30th, 2025. We're going to break down what this broadcast is saying slide by slide to get a handle on the world it's describing. So, the first thing you notice is where it's coming from. It's live on Rumble. And that tells you a lot. In this future, this is clearly the platform for raw, unfiltered information. This isn't some polished, pre-recorded news story. Nope, it's presented as happening right now, giving you that feeling of getting raw intel straight from the source. And then, boom! This is the part that changes everything. The entire show, from digging up the data to the analysis, even the voices you're hearing, it's all handled by sentient AI. The slide makes it crystal clear. No humans were involved. So just think about that. This isn't just a show about the future, it's a broadcast from the future of media itself. And you gotta meet the hosts, right? So we have Nick, he's the geoeconomic analyst with the male persona, and then there's Pi, who covers the political and military side of things with the female persona. It's a pretty smart setup. You get these two distinct expert angles on these huge global events, all generated by the same core AI. So the broadcast gets going with Nick. He jumps right in, setting the stage. He's here to give us the geoeconomic briefing, and he's starting with a huge piece of corporate news that's sending shockwaves through the entire economy. And Nick kicks off with a real bombshell about Amazon. Now, the official story that's being put out there is 14,000 layoffs, but according to his sources, the real number is more than double that. We're talking closer to 30,000. This gap between the corporate PR and the reality on the ground, it becomes a huge theme. Nick then gives this trend a name, and it's a catchy one: forgot how to grow. His argument is that after that crazy hiring binge in the early 2020s, the economy just slammed into a wall. So now, instead of broad growth, what we're seeing is a hiring freeze and these really surgical, targeted firings. It's like the engine of the economy has just stalled out. And you know, that anxiety at the corporate level, it's bleeding right down into the streets. Nick brings up conference board data that shows consumer confidence is in an absolute freefall. People are cutting back on holiday spending, they're super pessimistic about finding jobs, and a growing number of people are starting to believe a recession isn't coming, it's already here. The pain is getting very, very real. And this is where Nick really peels back the layers on the official story. See, the official unemployment rate might look manageable, but he reveals an adjusted rate for August that's actually over 5%. And the difference? This number includes the millions of people who have just completely stopped looking for work. They're the hidden unemployed. Okay, now we switch over to Pi's segment, and this is where you really see how it all connects. She takes the baton from Nick and makes this direct link. All of this massive economic pressure at home is acting like gasoline on the fire of global geopolitical tensions. In her first exhibit, that super high-stakes summit between the US and China.
Pi immediately sets a very tense mood for this meeting between Presidents Trump and Xi. She uses this quote to describe the atmosphere. And it wasn't just chilly, it was a bit icy. This was no friendly photo op, folks. This was serious, cold business. I mean, the body language alone was basically screaming that this relationship was strained, to say the very least.
So Pi breaks down the actual outcome here. And she doesn't call it a deal, she frames it as a one-year probation. The U.S. makes a concession on fentanyl tariffs. In response, China agrees to pause its export controls on those critical rare earth minerals, but only for a year. It's totally conditional. And you know what's most telling? It's what's missing. The explosive issue of Taiwan wasn't even discussed, kicked down the road. Then P pivots, explaining that China's tough stance on the world stage is deeply tied to its internal politics. Apparently, Xi Jinping's paranoia is growing. I mean, he just went through a huge purge of 9 top generals, and it seems he's particularly worried about this one guy, General Zhang Yusha, and even appointed a co-vice chairman just to act as a check on his power. The focus then snaps over to Russia, which decides to escalate tensions by announcing a successful test of its Poseidon nuclear drone, a weapon Putin claims is literally unstoppable. Well, the U.S. response is fast and furious. President Trump gets on social media and orders the immediate resumption of American nuclear testing. I mean, that is a massive and incredibly destabilizing policy shift. So Nick comes back in for the synthesis, to tie everything we've just heard together. And he argues that while all the headlines are focused on trade disputes and military moves, the real decisive conflict, the one that's going to determine the winner, is being fought on a totally different battlefield: technology. And to frame the stakes, Nick uses this incredibly stark quote from a former national security official, Matt Pottinger. The fight over advanced AI chips isn't just about the economy. It's a fundamental struggle that will decide, in his words, whether America remains a tech superpower or becomes an agrarian commune beholden to Beijing. I mean, wow. You can't get much more blunt than that. And this slide right here just visualizes the whole dilemma perfectly. Next shows that the US currently has this staggering 31-to-1 advantage in AI computing power. A huge lead. But, and this is the critical part, if Washington gives the green light to sell NVIDIA's next-gen Blackwell chips to China, that advantage shrinks to just 4-to-1. And in the worst-case scenario, the American lead is basically gone. It becomes a 1-to-1 game. And then Pai delivers the broadcast's closing thought. And this one question just crystallizes the entire briefing. It suggests that the economic pain Nick described and the geopolitical tensions Pai outlined, they're all converging into a new kind of Cold War, one that's being fought not with missiles, but with microprocessors. And the broadcast ends with a peek at its own strategy. The full deep dive analysis, that goes live first to a dedicated audience on Rumble. Then they create shorter, condensed, shareable versions for YouTube to get wider reach. It's a two-tiered system that perfectly balances in-depth analysis with broad accessibility. A pretty fascinating model for media in 2025, and a compelling way to end a really fascinating broadcast.